Welcome to the Equity Teacher Leader Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Rachael Mahmood. In this podcast, we'll dive into the stories, the voices, and the expertise of incredible teacher leaders who are making a difference through the equity work they do in their classrooms and their communities. Welcome back to another podcast episode for Equity Teacher Leader. I'm super excited today to have a special guest on the show with us. I met Berenice Diaz when we were both part of the Illinois Teacher of the Year cohort for 2024. I'm just super excited to have you here on the show with us. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thanks. I'm so happy to be here and I'm so honored you decided to pick me. As one of your guests. So I'm a dual language preschool teacher. I've been teaching for 6 years. I feel like it's so cliche to say like, I love it, but I do love it, right? Know too that some days are easier than others.
Yeah, and that's every job, right? What school do you work at again, or what district are you in?
So I work at the Early Learning Center in East Maine District 63. And it's actually funny because when I first started here, our preschool was all in separate buildings. So we have obviously several elementary schools, and I started off at one of them. But everyone, I felt like we were kind of just separated from everyone else. And so it was really nice that they built this building for us. And then now I feel like we're all like united. We're all on the same page. And it honestly just makes it so much easier to collaborate too.
Yeah, definitely makes it easier to collaborate when together. I always feel like the early childhood kind of gets the short end of the stick in public education. It's like they seem to be an afterthought, like where can we put a few more preschool rooms in our districts? And that can be a little overwhelming.
You know, it's so funny that you say that because 1,000 times yes. And if there are any early childhood preschool teachers there listening, I feel you. Yes, because I'm sure they feel it too. But I feel like now districts overall are really trying to make everyone feel as part of the school community. Because like we do have the teacher shortage and who wants to feel left out in a teacher shortage situation. So I feel like now everyone's just trying to be more aware of how they make their employees feel, their colleagues feel. So that's really nice.
Yeah. And I think that's really important, right? Belonging. Our teachers need to feel belonging, just like our students need to feel belonging. And there's a lot of micro messages that were sent about our teaching positions based on where we're put in the building, how many resources that we get, how much support we get. And so every teacher wants to feel that sense of belonging. Now, I know I grew up in a multilingual home. I'm half Asian, and my dad was Telugu speaking, which is a growing language in America right now. It's an Indian language for those people that don't know a lot about Indian languages. There's a lot of them. Did you also grow up in a bilingual home? Because I know you're a bilingual educator.
I did. However, mine was a little different. So I do have two older sisters, and obviously they were already in school when I was little. So my oldest sister, she was only ever exposed to Spanish until she went to school. And even when she went to school, there were no such thing as, dual language bilingual programs. And so schooling was super hard for her because she didn't speak English. Spelling was really hard for her. So my mom actually, to teach her English, because she herself was learning it too, would say the English word in Spanish. So my sister was remembering how to spell them. So for example, table was table. And she would be like, table, okay. And she'll spell it correctly. And mom was like, okay, now it's table. And she's like, huh? So I feel like that is what helped her. Well, when I was finally born, I had two older sisters who were already speaking English. So I had my parents who spoke to me in Spanish, mostly my mom, because my dad, I want to say he's fluent in English, but he knows enough to get by. And my mom is just all Spanish. And so I feel like I was growing up with both, but Spanish did come a tad bit easier to me. And so I started speaking Spanish. And then obviously once I started going to school, then it was English.
I feel like there's a reason they call it mother tongue, right? Because like whatever your mom speaks to you in is probably the language that you're going to be a little bit more dominant in. My husband speaks to my kids in Urdu, but I speak to them in English. So again, their dominant language is going to be English, because there's a reason they call it mother tongue. So yeah, I feel very close to the Hispanic community. I don't know a lot of Spanish, but I, for the last 9 years, have been working at Georgetown Elementary School, which is in Aurora. Majority of my students are Spanish speaking, Hispanic community, Latino community, predominantly Mexican. And I feel very close to the Spanish speaking community and to that culture. And one of the things that was really neat about working in that school for the last 9 years is that we had Spanish bilingual at every grade level. So I've never been so immersed in the English language learner programs and like learning so much from being in the general education setting, but having multilingual learners in my classroom.
You know, I love that you said that in your school district, they have, this type of program in every grade level. I think that's so important because oftentimes when it's only given up to a certain grade level, there's no follow up, right? So it's like you get all of these years preparing you to be this multilingual individual or bilingual individual, and there's no follow up. Then you lose it. Then where is that skill, right? Especially in like the world now, I feel like so many of our students, we're setting them up to be like, oh my gosh, you guys can be this bilingual individual out in the world. And when you grow older, there's so many jobs for you because everyone's looking for multilingual individuals. And then once they leave elementary, you're like, oh, so what now? So that's similar to what we do. I'm a preschool dual language teacher. And it goes all the way up to 5th grade where we have, this dual language classroom. So every grade has dual language. And then when they get to middle school, they have what's called Spanish for Spanish speakers.
We actually have the same thing. So we have like fully immersed, but we've actually been scaling back in our school district. So we used to be K-6 bilingual at every grade level in my school where I work because there's a larger Hispanic community, not in the whole district. But they've scaled back year after year. And now you're in the bilingual program, you're pulled out for half a day and you get bilingual half a day with the bilingual teacher. And then the other half of the day, you're in the general education setting versus before it was fully self-contained.
Wow. See, that's how we do it now. So like us, like whoever the dual language teacher is, they're the bilingual and the general ed. And in preschool, obviously the special ed teacher as well, right? Because I'm like all 3, 4 of them. But I always feel, and we've been trying to navigate, I don't know if I want to call it an issue, but like it is something that's on our radar where once they leave our district, because obviously high schools and like elementary districts are separate, right? Like we still have a partnership. However, we're completely different district. And we've been just having a lot of parents talking about how like once they get into high school, there's less of that follow up that I was speaking of earlier. And like they don't really know anything in terms of like more specifically to like their child continuing to get that dual language education. And recently our high school has hired like a dual language helper, I guess you can say, who really helps and navigates stuff with the parents. And we're really trying to establish some type of connection so we can all be on the same page because we have a lot of parent events here and we have a dual language parent advisory committee. And we really want the high school to start coming to our events to start building those relationships with the parents so that when they do go over to high school, they know who they can contact, they know what to expect. And we also have this like really cool like seal of biliteracy. So essentially it's like saying you're fluent in your native language and then in English. And so many families and students don't know about that. And it's truly so cool and such like an advantage because that also can be used for not having to take this foreign language classes in college.
Right, right. No, I've definitely heard about that. And that's a newer thing too, right? In the last year, the seal of biliteracy, I believe it's a newer policy that was just passed. So it's really awesome that you brought up parental involvement. That's something that I am incredibly interested in because parental involvement was the topic of my dissertation. specifically, I was studying low income African American mothers and their involvement in suburban schools. And I just found it so interesting because there's this idea that certain groups or cultures of parents might be less involved in their children's education. And one of the really interesting things that I found through my research is that parental involvement is a culturally defined term. What you might find as parental involvement, I may not think of as parental involvement, right? And what schools might be looking for might be not be the ways that parents are actually practicing involvement in their children's education. So, as I was thinking about that, I could tell that you were really passionate about parental involvement just from reading your bio and hearing about a lot of the projects that you're doing. And I think that the theme of involving parents more has really come out of the studies I've been doing on belonging and what kind of actions teachers want schools to take. They want involved parents. And a lot of that has been coming out of educators that serve Hispanic communities. So I'd love for you to tell us a little bit more about what are the programs that you're doing to increase parental involvement, or how are you engaging parents in your community?
First of all, I just want to say I know so often it's so easy for everyone to always say like parent involvement or parent. And really, it's family involvement, right? Because the family dynamics are different for everyone. And when you mentioned your dissertation was specifically about mothers, yeah, that makes sense to say like, oh, the parent, because it's focused on that parent. But what I really try to do is involve families, and it doesn't even have to be blood related. That's what I always tell my families. It can be any person who your child or you as a whole family view as your family, right? So a really close family friend, your best friend, the neighbor next door that's been part of your child's life since they were born or whatever. Anyone that's important to you guys. Honestly, I started off when I first started teaching. I was like, perfect, guest readers, amazing. Let me just do that. And I had like two people say them. And I said, what am I doing wrong? That guest reader, it's so easy. Everyone, and it never dawned on me that not everyone has had the privilege of getting an education and learning how to read.
Right.
And I was really like,
Or the time to take the day off to go and read at their children's school.
day of work you're missing for time.
I honestly have never done it for my own children. I get 3 business days off, and a lot of times I have to use them for things around the house or other appointments. And I don't want to say that I don't want to go and have a business day to go back to a school, but it's my day off,
Here's the thing too, that it's like, obviously everyone always wants to be there for their kid, but is
100%.
it realistic? No. I can't. Technically, I cannot use a sick day to do this, right?
I mean, a lot of those things are hard decisions to make. And also, when you only have a few days off, do you spend them going to school on those days? Some days you need to be out of that environment for your own mental health, well being, just to take a break, to have a quieter day. Sometimes you have to spend them on getting your car fixed or other things. I spend a lot of time with my children, but maybe not as much in school as I would have originally thought.
But that's where we're trying to change the shift of what involvement looks like, right? You spending time with your kids at home, that's family involvement.
100%.
You guys can be reading together. You guys can be doing a project together. That's involvement. It's not you physically being present at the school on that day that I have this event. No, it's you taking time to create memories with your children, to spend time with them, to do family. That's why I also send home family projects every month, because it's like this is a time where you can just enjoy family time together. And I always tell them it's not the product, okay? I don't care if you have the best colored turk. I care that you guys spent time together, that your child and you got a chance to create those memories together. That's being involved. That's helping your child grow academically and further their development.
Yeah. And I just want to say here, at this point, there's 2 ways to increase family engagement, right? The first way is to try to figure out how to get parents into school more, how to get them to help with their kids' homework, how to get them to answer our emails, how to get them to come into our school, how to get them to do the things we're looking for. The other way we can increase family engagement or parental involvement is to make space for their definitions of what it means to be involved. We can say, oh, you spent quality time with your child tonight. That's family involvement. Oh, you took your child to the store today, or you helped your child plan for something. That is involvement in your child's education, right? We can increase family involvement by what you just said, increasing our definition of family, right? Instead of it just being, well, how are your parents showing up at school? If you showed up with an aunt or an uncle or with a grandfather or a neighbor or anybody, that is still involvement. So we can also increase family involvement by making our own definitions of what family engagement looks like more open to our family's understandings as well as our own.
More broader term, and
Yeah,
that's
broader, right? We're making space for their cultural definitions.
in like a family involvement type of feel, because I feel, and I'm specifically talking about parents in this instance, parents already carry so much parental guilt sometimes of like, oh my gosh, am I doing this right? Did I do that? And like, obviously, I'm not a parent, but I say that because I have a sister who is a mother and she carries guilt, and she's such an amazing mother. That sometimes I'll be like, girl, are you crazy? Like, you are so amazing. But parents do constantly carry this guilt of like, am I doing enough? Are they going to remember? Yeah, yeah, you are. And especially like, I feel like I said before, everyone's family dynamics are so different, but also like going back to how we're saying about taking time off work and, can you attend school? Sometimes truly not, whether it's a financial situation or they're saving literally their own sick days because they have to come and pick up the child that is sick.
Right. I've been there. I definitely know that. I was just telling my friend who's pregnant and a teacher that no longer are your sick days your own sick days. From now moving forward, your sick days are really because your kids get sick so often. So definitely understand that and having that same grace, right? Like for ourselves, like I'm not the best at emptying my own child's Friday folder. I don't read with my child every single night. I'm not always there to help with homework. And then like having that grace for the families as well. Like as a teacher, I shouldn't be like upset when they're not emptying the Friday folder, reading with their child every night, because as a parent, I struggle with those things too. And so I think it's that empathy as well.
Well, it's because you're taking yourself out of the teacher role and putting yourself in like a parent role. And I feel so often people don't do that, right? Like I said earlier, I'm not a parent, but I often think, man, if I was, this would be kind of tough for me to do. Like I have a really, really long day. I can just go home and nap after. You can't do that, right? Like there's so
No. After this podcast, I'm going to STEAM fair night and math and literacy night at my child's school. And my children are feeding themselves right now while we're chatting. So the mom guilt is real, right? The after school activities are definitely there. We're talking about parental involvement and I'm going to an event tonight because my child asked me to go with her to that event and it was important to her. But yeah, I think that one of the things that you kind of bring here is that when we are making spaces for the ways parents show up, when we affirm their humanity, the reality of their situation, we come with them at empathy and understanding, it makes a big difference with our relationships with our families. And, emphasizing that not only are we there to help parents understand the educational system, but we're also there to learn about families' culture and their dynamics. We have something to learn from our families as well. And I think keeping that a two-way situation, just like when, they were sending the ants and you were like, you learned something in that moment, when the mystery readers were coming in and they weren't the parents, right? You learned something about family dynamics, about culture, and about supporting your students. I think that's amazing. Do you have any suggestions? I think we're hearing a lot right now about newcomers, right? And there's a lot of newcomers in our schools, predominantly from, Hispanic countries, Latino countries. Do you have any suggestions or strategies that have been working for you or that we can share or talk about to help our newcoming Spanish speaking families?
To be honest, I obviously being a dual language teacher, I get newcomers extremely often. And this is also goes hand in hand with what we were just talking about that family engagement. You have to build a relationship with them. They have to feel like they can trust you. And I feel like that is something I work so hard to do, because at first they come, sometimes they don't even speak the language, right? Or very little English or none. And I like to be the face that they see when they come into school, because so many of them, when they fill out the application, you know, as part of our screening process to start preschool and all that, almost like 9 times out of 10, the additional comments are parents and family saying like, I just want my child to be somebody in life. I want to give them a better life than what I've had. And you just, oh my gosh, that always tugs at my heart, because it's like, I understand like that. I understand you want so much for your child, and all you're trying to do is give them that. And so I always love reaching out to them and telling them like, hey, if you need help with registration, I've done registration 1,000 times, right? This is what I can do this in 5 minutes. For someone who doesn't understand it, it's overwhelming. It's a lot and it's scary. And I never want them to be scared. Come, let me help you so you feel comfortable. So it's one less thing you're getting anxiety about. And honestly, that always seems to work. And then from that point on, they, feel more comfortable contacting me. And I've had students whose parents are still contacting me for help, because once you set that foundation of like, you can trust me, we're on the same team, I'm here to help you and your child grow. They open that gate, because right, their guard is up. They don't know who they can trust. But once they feel good and okay, that open so many doorways to so many possibilities. And also the children, right? Like, they see children feel safer and more welcome once they think and they feel their family is welcome in their school community. And that's also, apart from that, once they trust you, inviting them to school events like, hey, I'm going to be there. You should come. And that's how I've been getting more of my families to come. And then, from there, it starts word of mouth, because they within themselves have their own communities, right? And then they tell this person, and that person tells this person, and that person met that person over there. And then and it's like a domino effect.
I think that's really, you kind of hit it right in the beginning there. Like, when you go to a new place, right? It can be scary. It can be overwhelming when you're doing something new for the first time. How do we put ourselves in those feelings as an educator? Imagine picking up your entire life and moving away from your family, moving away from your country, moving to a place that doesn't speak your language, where you can't find your food, your restaurants, all of those things that you're used to that bring you comfort, that make you feel like home, and starting over again. How can we empathize with people in that situation? And then how can we be kind of like the knowledge brokers in those situations and say, hey, let me reach out and help you. I'll help you navigate this system and earn that trust, because you genuinely care about their experience. And then through that trust, like, you become that mentor. And I think about even saying that invitation, that personal invitation, which is so important. I know in my culture, when you're personally invited somewhere, you show up. We don't show up for emails. We don't show up for text messages. But when we're like, it's a personal invitation, when somebody gets on the phone and calls you or says to your face, like, come, I'm going to be there. Like, you also feel more comfortable because a friendly face will be there. Right. And so that personal invitation is important, knowing that your support system is going to be there.
I agree. And like, that goes hand in hand. I'm saying like, that friendly faces in the crowd, sometimes they are so alone here. They don't have all of their family is back in their home country.
Yeah.
And I remember, actually, I think this was my second year teaching, still fairly, a new teacher. And it was when we were doing remote learning, and remote learning took the pandemic took a toll on everyone, right? It was a lot. And I had a parent who, once we were going to log off for our session, had asked me, do you think you can stay on? And I said, yeah, of course. And so everyone else logged off. It was small group time. That was just me and her. And she just started crying and crying and crying. And I said, are you okay? What's wrong? She's like, you don't understand how hard it's been. I feel so alone. All of my family is in Mexico. She's like, I don't know what to do. I feel like going back to that mom guilt. I'm feeling my child. I don't even know if I'm supporting him right. And literally, I feel part of it was just her having someone to listen, and then getting all of venting, and me just saying like, you're doing great. Don't worry about it. We're all in this together. The pandemic has been really hard. And just being there for her, and, I did look into like additional resources that could be beneficial to her after talking to one of her school psychologists. But that's another way that they don't feel alone, right?
Definitely, 100%. I mean, I'm married to an immigrant, and we go back and visit his family every year and stay there for 2 months. And some people think like it's crazy. Like, how can you go live in another country for 2 months? I'm like, my husband left his entire family to live here in this country with no family to be with me. And it's important that my kids are around his culture and his family too. So sometimes as teachers, we get frustrated with those extended vacations back home, but how important it is to the family's mental health that they're spending time with their family, that they're taking these like vacations to go back and be with their family. And they're expensive. So sometimes they have to take it when the flights are cheaper, right? If anyone's ever booked a flight over winter break, they know you're paying $1,000 easily more a ticket than if you book it 1 week before winter break or come back 1 week after winter break or 2 weeks. Sometimes the middle of February is when you can afford your family vacation to go see your grandparents and your parents. And yeah, so just, really important, I think. Absolutely. Well, this has just been amazing talking with you. Just so many great insights and feel incredibly connected. We have so many great topics in common that we're passionate about, working with the Hispanic community, being from bilingual families, working with multilingual learners. I actually didn't even bring up that I started my career in early childhood as well. And our focus on parental involvement. Just really honored the work that you're doing. Can definitely see why you are a Cook County Regional Teacher of the Year. All the great things you've done for your students. They are so incredibly lucky to have you. Your school district is so incredibly lucky to have you. Remember, you don't need a fancy position or a fancy title to be an equity leader. Every teacher leader can lead with equity right from their classroom. It's all about the heart we pour into our jobs and the way we view our students and how we show up and advocate for them.
Put the work in.